abusuafo for sabe can say a parliament a committee or mati just almost the briefy a Ghanaians no a very interesting pie oh na na dia kwa say the debate no Afenyo makini and Us-Ayariga ni just say when you wait and wait your motivate we cannot just say Afenyo makin ka na Us-Ayariga responded with a lot of exposed side etato. Now, catch Afenyo makin say agenda na washishi ni nyina no onimu. Sa agenda na washisha no onimu na emfa because first of all no in the chamber in parliament the way nyina no anim say amfa ufeli ne agenda no say na kapesa ye de odi exposing na so system na be feel amma chese nkofo ma hia wo nyina ye de esre chese almost Afenyo makin enya senketo oje forwing senkewan se ke NPP otiwobi Diana and Guase ne konosura Afenyo makin bit my intervene now so we die one more Afenyo makin na nkasa ne exposing to oje forwing just say on some media form when you know the essay na just enya senketo Us-Ayariga asa bobo niema bi so a just person me we say NPP ankasa dey never again mo bianye the end that yenkoninkweti.
The way you started turned it into a debate about the records of the two governments, and so I was forced to respond. Otherwise, I didn't want us to go in that direction. I think that we're just meeting our in-house media partners and then to brief them on the program and agenda of the session, and then we will. Oh, why are you laughing? I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go there. No, as you see, I don't have a speech responding to him, but we are covered live, isn't it? So if he says things and I don't respond, it may seem that what he has said is true. So if you say it, I'll be forced to respond. But my real agenda coming here really was to discuss this, which is just the agenda for the session. I had no speech on the economy or info analytics and etc. What he failed to achieve in the chamber yesterday, he thought he could use this platform to achieve it. That's what he's trying to do. He's my brother. We know each other very well. In spite of all the things that you see, we are very, very good friends. So, and I know him. I knew he was going to do that. Because after the program, he told me, hey, is that what you did to me? Tomorrow, I'll also do it to you. So, I'm not surprised that he's doing it. So, no. We have a very healthy democracy. Ghana has a very, very healthy democracy. Other countries get shocked when they come and see how, as politicians, we relate to each other. Because in other jurisdictions, the politicians just don't relate at all. But here, we relate nicely. We try to argue on points. We may say all the things that we're saying, but when we walk out there, we start discussing our personal issues with our friends who are working. And we try to encourage that among the citizenry also, that let it just remain at the level of discourse about who is doing better, but don't translate it into violence, is that okay? And other tendencies that will destroy our society. I agree that we need to create more jobs. I agree, and if you listened to me yesterday, I was very, very candid on that the youth need more jobs, but jobs can only be created on the footing of a sound economic framework. And that has to happen first before the private sector can be enabled to create the jobs. And again, and I have to be very frank with fellow Ghanaians, that the conviction or belief or expectation that the state institutions should be overbloated so that jobs will be created is counterproductive. Because if Ghana Gas, which infrastructure was run with 120 workers, you go and employ 1,000 workers, as happened, under the NPP. And the statistics are there. If it's challenging, we can summon the CEO to come and give us the statistics. When we constructed the gas plant, only 120 workers were there managing the same gas plant. When we came back to office January this year and we took over the plant, we saw that the same plant that we had 120 workers managing is now being managed by over 1,000 workers. Now, how can that state institution be profitable? There's no way it can be profitable. Because every money that they make, they'll have to use it to pay for labor. And so because it's not profitable, it cannot expand. If it were profitable, if it were run efficiently, so that they are managing it with 120 workers, they are making a lot of profits. By now, they could have used their earnings to establish a second gas plant and employ another 120, a third gas plant to employ another 120, and the challenges that we are having in the energy sector, we will not have to face those challenges. The reason why we are paying huge utility tariffs, and he mentioned it, so I just segue into that. The reason why we are paying huge utility tariffs is because we are using liquefied petroleum products, that is, diesel and coal, to power our generators. And because diesel is expensive, if a power producer uses diesel to power his plant, he has to charge you, the consumer, the cost of the diesel. And if he uses gas to power his plant, his cost can go down, I'm told, by over 70%. Over 70%, I'm told. So the strategy of this government to be able to deal with the cost is to shift our power plants from those diesel products to gas, so that we can be able to drive down the cost of generation, and then we pass on the benefits of the reduced cost to the consumers, which is citizens for domestic use and industry, to power industry, so that Ghana can be competitive to be able to generate the jobs. If a factory is taking a decision between either siting in China or Ghana, one of the major conditions that they are asking for is energy cost affordable in Ghana? Is electricity affordable in Ghana? If electricity is not affordable in Ghana, they will not position the factory in Ghana, because if they site the factory in Ghana, they are going to be producing at a very high cost. But if they site it in China, they will produce at a very low cost, and even with haulage to Ghana, they will still be very, very competitive against a factory that has chosen to site its operation in Ghana. So if you don't reduce energy cost to a certain level, the private sector will just not be able to perform. About 3 weeks ago, the private sector organized a conference, a press, I'm sure many of you covered it, at which they raised the issue of energy cost and said that unless energy cost goes down, it will be difficult for them to survive. So that's a matter that, as a government, we are focused on. And in addition, you left us with a huge unreasonable debt at ECG. ECG, you were board chairman. You were board chairman. You know how much debt you left. You yourself have admitted it on the floor during debates about how bad the situation at ECG was when you assumed leadership there as board chairman, and efforts that you also tried to make to address that situation. At the time you were leaving office, you hadn't fixed it. The debts are still lying there. Who's going to pay for those debts? Who is going to pay for those debts? You stopped them in 2024. You stopped PURC from adjusting tariffs because you are afraid of its implications on you for elections. The records are there. You stopped them. He is not denying it. You stopped them from adjusting tariffs in 2024 because you were afraid of the implications on your electoral fortunes if they adjusted tariffs. So the debt kept mounting. Because if you are producing at a very high cost, and then government is forced, ECG is supposed to take it at that high cost, and the ECG doesn't adjust the tariff to reflect the cost at which they are taking the commodity, and yet they are supposed to sell it to consumers at a very low cost. Who is going to pay the differential between how much they are buying and how much they are selling it to consumers? That is normally done through gradual, tariff adjustments. And you stop them from adjusting the tariffs. So the debt just kept ballooning to very, very unreasonable levels. Billions and billions of Ghana cedis of debt at ECG. That has to be addressed. But for the engineering that we have done to make sure that lights never go off so that they can always afford diesel to run the power plants for us to have 24-hour, electricity, it would have been very difficult. But even as you do that, you must work towards a sustainable arrangement. And one of it is that you must be realistic in terms of the adjustment of tariffs. In addition, you must deal with the inefficiencies and the corruption. The corruption. I'm told that at ECG, they've procured things that they need in the next 4 or 5 years. You procure for just a year, and then the next year you procure, and the next year you procure. Why do you go and procure things that you need for 5 years? Some of them, their lifespans don't even go up to 5 years. So they will get destroyed in the process, and that will be causing financial loss to the state. So we are fixing the corruption and the mess there. We are fixing the inefficiencies. We are cutting down on the wastage, and we are trying to make ECG very, very profitable, ECG and NEDCO. And go and see what is happening there. It is now working well. But it takes time to deal with the legacy debts. And Ghanaians need to support us to deal with those issues. At the same time, you must have a long-term strategy to drive down power production cost. So the president and government have decided to increase our gas production capacity. So a new gas processing plant is going to be constructed so that we can have additional gas to be able to power all the gas plants with power plants with gas, so that production costs will come down drastically and we can sell power much, much cheaper to both household consumers and for industrial use. In the meantime, government has also decided that we are going to look at the distribution challenges, because there's so much infrastructure challenge that is causing a lot of wastage in the distribution. So if you buy 10 megawatts of power as ECG from a power producer, because your infrastructure is inefficient, by the time it gets to the consumers, let's say 2% of it has been leaked through inefficiencies. So you need to fix the distribution infrastructure. So when you buy 100%, by the time it gets to the consumers, even if there is some waste, maybe some 0.something%, leakage and waste, then the full amount, close to the full quantity of what you have purchased actually gets to the consumers. Second thing is inefficiency in the collection of revenues. And so government has also decided that we are introducing private sector participation in the distribution and the collection of the electricity tariffs. And so when we do that, look, the global best practice is that utilities are able to recover 98% of their revenues. That's the global best practice. In Ghana, ECG was collecting only 85%. 85%. But the global best practice standards is 98%. So the difference between the 98% and 85% was actually loss occasioned in the distribution and the revenue collection. So we want to bring in private sector participation. There was an initial idea, PDS was a model for bringing in private sector participation, but thanks to the character of those who were introducing it, it got botched because of the manner in which the attempt to introduce it went. So those are the issues. I do agree with you that so far the macroeconomic indicator stabilization has not fully translated, is that okay, into job creation. But again, that is a function of confidence. The private sector needs to see you sustain it for them to be confident to now make the investments in expanding their factories and their industries. And 9 months is not enough to build confidence in the system that you have built so that they can say, okay, I think the dollar will remain where it is. So let me go and borrow and establish a new factory. I think interest rates will remain where it is. So let me go and borrow and then establish a factory. Or I think inflation will remain where it is. And so purchasing power of consumers will stay the same. It takes time to build that confidence. So even though we've brought down the indicators, because it takes time to build confidence in private sector for them to actually invest, to expand and create jobs, that has not yet happened. But
for the Ankasa Suma, you hold your course, and right now, maybe a bit more conclude say if Afenyo marking him say, a baby Akroma. If in conform within a chair NPP MPs or motion national, if say communing passing a commuli damo. A year Us-Ayariga at the Bayana keeps the command the Afenyo marking chamber. Because this committee now more or more so more casano. Or man tisa or more de ye banto. Or more de portray a nearma a becoso for this setting. It be a year to force library the budget. It be a make up piano be on copy a this, it be a get finance, it be sa scarcely near a nearma a war the becosono and a commanding on marriage not for debate. Now, so Afenyo marking a chassis and or divert the agenda for the meeting. Say Us-Ayariga are responding now. I quite yesterday. The all can in yampa. Na media for no. Sabi omo kasenya no more publish it. Or kasenya no more publish it. It is a Us-Ayariga are responding. And chenny the over at the end no. Some cry is in the evening. Some the government no more fairly under health sector, no more fairly under education, no more fairly under agri sector, no more fairly under factory, no more now okay. Meanwhile the government is working. And a back comparison ma ain't mean far. Even this 10 months, a moon Us-Ayariga you know. What the Akufo the end to 8 years na enye. What the Akufo the end to enye. Na BBC and surprising because Afenyo marking was part of that government. No so can be. Since when you can defend here and because when defend here, I'm not for because idea we can send us what can be. So this is the opportunity. No wait him there defend. So one cause so call ACG. Afenyo marking was there. But on one has an near air course or no. Then one. It's now on one bar want to make us say Nima ABC the course me complaining and so I'm Us-Ayariga. The bend the past this government beat my investigation. Okay, can you now? Ne won you say all these messes on my year go where. Why name it here? Mess and so I'm creating go on man for that pool. Man for 2, 3, 4, 5 months. It continues year after year. So I didn't know what I expect to say. And then I'm on my include you can one. Yen kata yen international and how? And like Odrin and one won't ask you. So quite crazy. The level of hypocrisy no in Afenyo market rise and rise. And I'm all for respecting the party, you know, you're respecting her. But near or kappa I don't person you so tell intelligence analyzing. Why no dream said that time now go found running or no count no more boma ni Ghana heavy no. Near free. If say you did everything right, I didn't know I'm penny for national say patch or some money. That was the reason why I got watching that come back and say Moncro for the Munja Chow panel. Because you claim it's why in BBI also a patch, one fine J, we will do better, one fine J. So Muyi BBI Ghana for and Twabaka Kesi and Tiamo, they voted against you people massively. It's not a media for no money and almost when you go as an uncle and come in and Subuno. Or Momo says so, I see who count. Na mama ya yami say, the idea. We didn't near, now so I feel it. And who feel in the chamber and you are feeling again. So Jai and fatal and wow. You are defending the undefendable and wow. I just say only money who say or I just say. Beat my chair, I do another comment section. I'm going to be because I did it in a blue. For once,